Based upon the FIFA statutes, a 4-month notice is required for any presidential elections to be held. FIFA must also consider appropriate time to vet candidates and allow them to present their ideas for the organization and set forth their vision. Therefore, while the decision on timing of the extraordinary Congress and election of a new president will ultimately be up to the Executive Committee, the expectation is that this could take place any time from December of this year to March of next year. For 4 years, FIFA has worked hard to put in place governance reforms, but as the President has stated, this must go further to implement deep-rooted structural changes. The President has outlined a number of specific recommendations to achieve this. A number of these steps have previously been proposed but have been rejected by members. Today, more than ever, FIFA is committed to ensuring that these changes are implemented and upheld. As part of FIFA's work, the organization will re-examine the way in which it is structured. While it would be premature to speculate on the outcome of this work, nothing will be off the table, including the structure and composition of the Executive Committee and the way in which the members of the Executive Committee are elected. I expect this to be an important aspect of ongoing reforms. As I said a year ago, the structure of the Executive Committee and its members are at the core of the current issues that FIFA is facing. Current events only reinforce my determination to drive this forward. Many of the issues that have been raised in the past relate to the actions of individuals. In order to ensure that those who represent FIFA are of the highest integrity, FIFA will seek to implement FIFA-driven integrity checks for all Executive Committee members. Such a reform was previously proposed by the Independent Governance Committee, but was rejected by the confederations. Today, these checks are the responsibility of the confederations to which these members belong. This must change. Confederations' actions must be consistent with their speech. While FIFA operates in line with all applicable laws and international accounting standards, FIFA recognizes that many have questioned the transparency by which FIFA operates. To address specific calls, FIFA will seek to publicize the compensation of the President and the Executive Committee members and will propose term limits for the President and the Executive Committee members. FIFA is fundamentally committed to change and are determined to address these issues that continue to undermine FIFA and football more broadly. Today, the President communicated his decision to all 209 members. Now it is the time for FIFA to move forward. There is significant work to be done in order to regain the trust of the public and to fundamentally reform the way in which people see FIFA. These steps will ensure that the organization cannot be used by those seeking to enrich themselves at the expense of the game. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, we will not communicate further. If we change, if there is another media activity, we'll let you know. And said that, have a nice day.
On that note, have a nice day, but an extraordinary press conference there. Sepp Blatter, FIFA president, resigning. I have with me Patrick Snell. Just watching that, we were talking beforehand. We didn't know what was coming. A bombshell. Nobody expecting this.
Absolutely. To say I'm shocked. I was expecting the president to speak, but to deliver that, I thought it was going to be a message of defiance. I thought it was going to be more of what we saw last week when he went on the offensive, remember. But it looks as though he's been advised. It looks as though he's taken stock of that advice. He's had the weekend and beyond to reflect upon it now. And he's obviously saying to himself, and I think it was important for him to be seen to win the most recent election, which gave him a 5th and unprecedented term. And what I'm picking up on here, Robin, is that he's put thought into this, greatly considered my presidency, the last 40 years of his life to which he's been devoted to, and I don't doubt his love for the beautiful game. He spoke of his love for FIFA more than anything else. He wants to do what is best for football. Now, the critics will say too little, too late. He says FIFA needs profound restructuring, and this is the key timeline. These are the key dates as far as we have them. We will be getting an extraordinary Congress, will be held as soon as possible, when a new president will be elected, but that isn't going to be until sometime between December and March. December later this year and March of next year. That's a 4 months notice, a time for candidates to get together. And we just heard there from Domenico Scala, he's the chairman of the FIFA Audit and Compliance Committee, referring as well to deep-rooted structural changes. Nothing will be off the table, especially the makeup of FIFA's executive committee and the way in which they are elected. This is a huge bombshell. There's no question about that. Sepp Blatter will be 80 next year and has clearly decided that after winning select to a new man to take over.
I mean, most people, generations of football lovers have literally watched football under Sepp Blatter's leadership over the past 40 years. This is a big decision for him, obviously impacted by this investigation by the US authorities and Swiss authorities. Still, though, he is not implicated directly in any of this.
Absolutely, and that's very important to make that clear. President itself of the association since 1998. He's been with FIFA since the mid-70s. It's all he's known. And there were many people who feared, the critics especially, that he just wanted to go on. But he, as I say, he's taken that advice, he's decided to step down, and this is a chance for change. It is a chance now for those critics, those many critics, Robin, to step up to the table. And Mr. Blatter is saying, OK, over to you. Let's see what you got. Let's see who is going to undertake this enormous task. It is an enormous task. This is an association that has just been tarnished so badly over the years now. It's a question of, you know, the beautiful game, one big ugly stain. Who is going to take up the challenge? Who's going to resolve it?
Indeed. I mean, the investigators, the FBI last week saying the beautiful game has been hijacked. The list facing the organisation: racketeering, wire fraud, money laundering, corruption that is, quote, rampant, systematic, deep-rooted. This coming from the US authorities. Clearly a lot for the incoming president to deal with. But first of all, Sepp Blatter saying he knows his mandate was not supported by clubs and by players. How much do you think that has made a difference?
I think that's huge. I think, you know, he's always wanted to appeal to not just the fans, and he has a certain charisma. No one would doubt he has a certain charisma. I've met him, I've interviewed him a couple of times. I've been in his office at FIFA headquarters in Zurich. There's no question about that. I don't doubt his passion for the game. I don't doubt his love for the game. There's no doubt about that in my mind. But what I think we're seeing here is a hurt. It's a personal disappointment. Loyalty is so important to him, and he right at the end, just before he exited stage right, the last thing he said was he wanted to thank those for their loyalty to him, and that's so important. And maybe it's now a case of there's just too many who aren't showing their loyalty to him, and that's a sign for him to go.
Okay, stay with us. Patrick Snell there. Michelle Hirschman joins me now by phone from Washington. Michael Hirschman, sorry, apologies, joins me now from Washington via phone. He's the president and CEO of Fairfax Group and a former member of FIFA's Independent Governance Committee. Michael, what do you make of what we've just heard?
Well, this is, to me, a great relief. I have been calling for Mr. Blatter to step down for some time now. And this is the first step in a cleansing process that FIFA must go through in order to regain credibility.
Credibility, but a lot of work. Even Blatter himself saying deep structural change is needed. A focus there we heard from Mr. Scala on the executive committee. What do you have to say about that? Where does that change need to start?
Well, it needs to start at the top, but it needs to start by bringing independent voices to the table, people that don't have any economic interest in the success of FIFA and in the success of the sport. It's time for FIFA to broaden its inclusion of people outside of the FIFA family, voices outside of the FIFA family. But let me say that it's the next leader that's chosen will either make or break FIFA, because if it's not a person who's seen as someone who is above reproach, someone who, if he comes from inside the system, someone who is not touched by scandal, and someone who is not anointed by Sepp Blatter.
That's the key, isn't it, according to many people watching, that someone not anointed by Sepp Blatter, an outsider. But still, this isn't just about one man, isn't it? It's about systematic problems within the organization that Sepp Blatter has acknowledged today. How does the whole organization change?
Well, look, first you've got to go back historically, and you have to look under every rock. And you have to find out what went wrong. So FIFA has always had, on paper, good systems and good controls. It has always had, on paper, a code of conduct. It always had a compliance program. But those have been subverted. And unless you know the ways in which they've been subverted in the past, it's going to be very difficult to fix them for the future. So you've got to hold those accountable and to make sure that the systems and controls have appropriate independent oversight so they cannot ever be subverted again.
Sepp Blatter, when he won that fifth term last week, seemed invincible to many who watched him. Why do you think this decision has been taken now? Is it about this investigation? Is it about the fans and the lack of support from supporters and clubs? Is it about the pressure from the big corporates who sponsor FIFA? Why do you think the timing is happening right now?
Well, three things finally have come to a head. One, the sponsors have become increasingly frustrated and have finally begun to speak out and to apply pressure that they should have been applying for years now. Number two, the federations, those that care about transparency and accountability, and I'm particularly talking now about the European federations, are talking about breaking away. And that would mean the beginning of the end of FIFA. And thirdly, indeed, finally, a jurisdiction had the courage and had the tools to be able to bring some justice to those within the FIFA system who have been corrupting it for years.
You talked about the federations. We know that Sepp Blatter got a lot of his support from the national federations. Perhaps not so much the Europeans, but even last week we heard the head of Nigerian football speak to our Alex Thomas, saying that he wholly supported Sepp Blatter. Sepp Blatter had made the smaller country feel important too. Why has that loyalty changed? Has their position shifted in the last week?
Well, I think that it has started to shift because I think that they feel exposed now. Now that they know that they are within reach of other governments in terms of their own federation's behavior, I think they're starting to feel vulnerable. But look, you know, I did see that statement by the federation head in Nigeria. You know, I hate to say this, but Nigeria is not exactly known as a country that honors integrity, that honors transparency and accountability. I don't think that many of the federations that supported Sepp Blatter, I hate to generalize like this, but I will say many of the federations that were his largest supporters come from countries where the pocketbook is more important than integrity or transparency or accountability is. And so they were voting for the man who had helped them in the past and likely would help them in the future by putting money into their federations and in some cases, unfortunately, into their pockets, regardless of whether there's an image of corruption within FIFA.
Yeah, I know. I think we've got to be careful generalizing in terms of which countries and which federations might or might not be part of any of this investigation. The fact remains is that in Africa, I'm South African, I covered that 2010 World Cup. Sepp Blatter was an incredibly well-received person by the ordinary South African. He's been feted across the world, often as sort of a world leader, received by fellow world leaders as an equal. This This is a man who had extraordinary power and a lot of respect by many in the footballing world, particularly in the developing footballing world, who didn't see the corruption. They just saw him as a man who was fighting for their side. This clearly is going to shift the whole balance of football in terms of the politics of football. What do you think is going to happen now?
Well, I don't think it should not shift the balance of football. Sepp Blatter did a lot of good things for southern countries that were underrepresented in football. And I don't mean by votes alone. I mean in terms of the recognition they were getting, in terms of their inclusion into the inner sanctum of FIFA. And under any progressive leader, that should continue. There should be support for federations on those continents that don't have the resources and the money that some of the richer countries have. But, you know, we surely FIFA can find a progressive leader who will continue down that track, but also be honest. And indeed, I know exactly what you mean when you say that the common folk in South Africa honored him and were awed by him when he appeared there. But at the same time, when he appeared on the pitch during the Olympics in London, the crowd booed him. He was booed in Brazil. When you have ultimate power and authority, and you run an organization based on fear and intimidation, that does filter down to the fans. And it does affect the image in the fans' minds of the leadership of FIFA. So now it's time to look forward to a progressive leader who will reach out, who will be inclusive, but who will make sure that the mistakes of the past are not repeated.
Michael Hirschman, thank you so much for your perspective. You were in Zurich last week. Thank you for joining us here on CNN. Well, I want to go to my colleague Alex Thomas, who's in London. Alex, too, you were in Zurich. You watched all of this drama unfold. What were you thinking when you heard Sepp Blatter's resignation?
Yeah, I was as flabbergasted as my colleague Patrick Snell, who was with you in the studio a bit earlier. Very hard to put into words how a man that has been Mr. FIFA since 1998, and let's not forget he's been at the organisation a lot longer than that, 40 years. It's his anniversary today. He joined in 1975. And he's now going to be going, although not immediately, of course. He will stay as president in the interim until FIFA's Congress, all 209 national football associations from across the globe, comes together for an extraordinary meeting to elect a new leader. But by all accounts, and judging from the content and the tone of that speech we heard from FIFA House in Zurich a little bit earlier on, he is handing over the reins and he will only stay in title alone, it seems. There's a big burden now, Robin, on Domenica Scala. This is somebody that probably isn't a very familiar name to most football fans around the world, whereas Sepp Blatter has been so synonymous with leading FIFA, good and bad, for so many years. Scala is Switzerland born and bred, really. He's got an economics degree from the University of Basel, where he was born. He's had various senior leadership roles in different pharmaceutical, medical companies and chemical companies indeed. He's had various audit experience, which is probably why he's chairman of the Audit and Compliance Committee. And he's really part of FIFA's new breed, I guess you could describe, someone that's come into FIFA recently enough not to be handcuffed to the baggage that's accompanied so many of the long-serving FIFA members at the very top level, the executive committee and other of the major committees that run the world game. And he's come in with, I was going to say new ideas, but ideas that aren't new to those of us who live in the real world, the modern corporate world, with governance and transparency, standards and practices that we all have to adhere to. He's brought those ideas to FIFA and hasn't said as much, but probably been shocked by some of the goings-on. And it's clear that that new breed that has slowly eked into football in recent years have added to the pressure. It's been the unseen force that's helped drive Sepp Blatter out of FIFA, or will do when Congress elects a new leader, Robin. So this is the most historic day in the history of the world's most popular sport, Robin.
Well, thanks so much. And I know that we're sitting here with my colleague Patrick Snell, and he's itching to ask you a question. He's kind of waving at the camera, and I'm going to throw it to you because I know there's a lot to talk about here.
Yeah, I absolutely want to tap into Alex's experience here. The fact that he was on the ground, Alex, last week in Zurich. What's the straw that's broken the camel's back here, do you feel? Because late last week, after his re-election, we were saying, I'm the president of all. It was a mood of ebullience, defiance from Blatter. What's triggered this?
We don't know yet, Patrick, is the honest answer, and we may never know, although I suspect the details may come out in due course. I'm of a split mind. I've got the transcript of Blatter's speech that he gave at Zurich House half an hour ago, and he talks a lot about doing what's best for football rather than doing what's best for himself. And having met the man, I did the first TV interview with Sepp Blatter after he was re-elected for a fourth term back in 2011. That was a controversial election. At the time, he had a challenger in the run-up to that vote, Mohammed bin Hammam, the former head of Asia's Football Confederation. But bin Hammam was taken off the ballot paper just days before that election, accused of corruption that was subsequently proved, and he was thrown out of football. So Blatter got in unopposed in the end, and that certainly created massive headlines. Sepp Blatter at the time said, I'm going to reform FIFA from within. I'm not corrupt. I'm the man that's going to change the image of the game. Doesn't that sound familiar? We heard all of this back on Friday when he defeated Prince Ali bin Al Hussein to be re-elected for a fifth term. And to Blatter's credit, he helped instigate the process by which FIFA formed an independent ethics commission. Two chambers, one to investigate and one to judge. Michael Garcia, the US prosecutor, was head of the investigatory chamber, and Hans-Joachim Eckert, the German judge, was in charge of that chamber. Garcia has since quit over the infamous Garcia report, his investigation into the controversial 2018 and 2022 World Cup bidding process, which is now also the subject of the Swiss criminal investigation that's happening in tandem and separately to the US Justice Department investigation into the other corruption stretching all the way back over 20 years. So you can already see I'm getting myself deeper and deeper into this layer after layer of scandal and corruption that's heaped on Sepp Blatter, even though he has tried to reform the organisation from within. I met the man in 2011, as I said, for that TV interview. We met in Azerbaijan, again, one of the new countries he was helping to take the sport to, and he is charming in real life. There is a real air of charisma about the man, which is partly to explain how he beat Prince Ali bin Al Hussein. But the cynical part of me, the journalistic side of me, says there is something that we don't know that is the tipping point to this, and it could have something to do with so many close allies having been arrested and caught up in this scandal. Somebody is saying something somewhere, and there could be a smoking gun that will emerge over the days to come.
Yeah, we know how important that loyalty, you used the word loyalty right at the end there before he exited stage right, as I'm seeing it. But of course, social media already, Alex, as you know, rife with speculation, frenzied speculation. Who would want to inherit the task of even following in his footsteps?
It's very hard to pick out the potential next president of FIFA. Whoever it is has got a mammoth task. Michel Platini's name is sure to be mentioned. He's the current president of UEFA, Europe's governing body. He was the man that very publicly came out before last week's election in Zurich and says most of UEFA's national associations will be backing Prince Ali bin Al Hussein, Blatter's challenger. Platini said in a news conference the day before the vote it was very hard for him to speak out against a friend, as he liked to describe Blatter, but the two we know have been at loggerheads for some years now. Platini himself didn't think it wise to stand against Blatter because, frankly, I think Platini felt Blatter wasn't beatable, and he was right. Sepp Blatter got 133 votes to Prince Ali's 73 votes. That was enough for Prince Ali to have taken the election to a second round, but this was by 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening, Swiss time last Friday, and to spare us all the pain after a long week, he decided he wouldn't have the support in the second round of voting, and he stood down, allowing Blatter to be coronated as FIFA president for a fifth time. And you're right, Patrick, he was really upbeat after that, but that is part of Sepp Blatter. He takes all the blows, and has done over years and years, and comes up smiling. His payoff words at that Congress on Friday was, hey, just enjoy life.
Yeah. Alex Thomas, thank you so much. Yeah, if you're just joining us, FIFA President Sepp Blatter to step down the timeline. The very latest is there's going to be a FIFA Extraordinary Committee meeting. That is going to be a Congress meeting, and we're going to have that any time between December and March, Robin, of next year. That's the timeline given as of right now.
Indeed, and FIFA President Sepp Blatter saying that he loves FIFA more than anything else. That's what's behind this decision. He says it's time to stand down for the good of football. Let's just listen again to what he said earlier.
I appreciate and love FIFA more than anything else, and I only want to do the best
pour le football et pour notre
for
institution, la
football
FIFA.
and for FIFA, our institution.
J'ai donc décidé de me représenter à la présidence.
I decided to stand again to be elected because I was convinced that it was the best option for football.
Les élections sont terminées.
The elections are closed.
Mais les défis qui se posent à la
The
FIFA
challenges that
ne le sont
FIFA
pas.
is facing have not come to an
La
end.
FIFA a besoin d'une
FIFA
profonde restructuration.
needs profound restructuring.
Bien que les membres de la FIFA
Although
m'aient
the
conféré ce nouveau mandat,
members of FIFA have given me the new mandate, have re-elected
ce mandat
me
n'a pas
president.
le soutien de l'intégralité
This
du
mandate
monde
does
du
not
football,
seem
et
to be
j'entends par
supported
là
by everybody
des
in the world
supporters,
of
des joueurs, des
football,
clubs,
supporters, clubs,
de tous ceux qui
players,
vivent, qui respirent
those
et aiment
who
le
inspire
football
life in
autant que
football,
nous tous à la FIFA.
as much as we do at FIFA.
C'est pourquoi je remettrai mon
And
mandat à disposition
This is why
lors d'un congrès électif extraordinaire.
I will call an extraordinary
Cette décision
Congress and
prendra
put
effet
at
le plus tôt
disposal
possible, à
my
savoir la date à
function.
laquelle un nouveau
It
président
is going to
pourra
be
être
held as
choisi
soon as
pour le
possible,
congrès de la
and a
FIFA
new
pour
president will be
succéder.
elected to follow me as the new president. I will continue to exercise my function as president of FIFA
Jusqu'à l'organisation
until
de ces prochaines élections.
the new elections are going to be held.
New elections to be held in an extraordinary Congress of FIFA. This will probably take place, according to some of those officials who followed Sepp Blatter, between December and March next year. That said, the headline this hour, Sepp Blatter, FIFA president, has resigned. Well, on the phone with us now is commentator and former editor of World Soccer magazine, Keir Radnage. Up to a few days ago, Sepp Blatter even had Vladimir Putin coming out and showing his support. But now Blatter saying he doesn't have a mandate from the clubs, from the players, from the supporters. What's changed?
Well, this is the question that everybody is wondering. Obviously, the events of last week, when various officials were arrested and indictments were handed down, that didn't shake Blatter's determination to carry on, because he was elected and he was in a triumphal mood on Friday at FIFA Congress when he got back in. So one can only wonder whether there is more bad news for him to come, and he decided to go before he was pushed.
This is all speculation, and we've got to be very careful here. But we have been focusing, and there has been reports in the past 24 hours, specifically about the South African World Cup and a payment of $10 million and the alleged involvement of one of Sepp Blatter's right-hand men, Jerome Falk. It seemed like at least the accusations that were becoming closer and closer to him. These have all been denied, of course, but is there a chance that he is going to be involved in a lot of these investigations? We know that the US investigators last week said it was the beginning, not the end, of their process.
Well, both the Swiss and the United States investigators have said that, they hadn't got anything on Blatter at the moment, but that didn't stop them questioning him in the future, and no one knew where their investigations would go. I think the Valka thing in South Africa has been a little bit of a sideshow. I tend to think that what was extraordinary, not only about Blatter's decision to suddenly announce his U-turn, was that suddenly he was in favour of all the reform proposals which he has hitherto helped sort of slide away and push away to the side.
So how do you think this is going to play out within FIFA in the coming days, in the coming months?
Well, I think FIFA itself, which is a pretty resilient organisation, it's had to be, will carry on doing its job, which is running tournaments and carrying on with its development work. I'm very encouraged that Domenico Scala is really going to be overseeing the next month through to the Extraordinary Congress, because he's a Swiss businessman. He's not linked at all to FIFA. He has a very high reputation for probity and credibility, and I think that's a very good step. And I wait with interest to see the proposals he brings forward, because in a sense, what is happening is that FIFA suddenly, as Thomas Bach of the IOC has indicated, FIFA needed its Salt Lake moment, and this is FIFA's Salt Lake moment times 100.
So how does this impact football, soccer, fans, players across the world?
To be quite honest, it'll have very little obvious effects on them. Players will still go out and play, and fans will still go out and cheer their teams on. But I think this will lift the cloud that has been hanging generally over the game, this cloud of depression and suspicion and concern and doubt and antagonism about where the game is going. I think this is a very, very positive day for football. I mean, I think Blatter's his big mistake basically was to stand again this time. He served FIFA for many, many years, and really it was time to let go, and he should have listened to the people who said, listen, Sepp, you've had enough, we need fresh air.
Fresh air. So who do you think will be his successor? Who has the credentials to take this position? Who wants this job?
Well, that's an interesting question. Obviously, there will be support from Michel Platini, who the president of the European Federation, who many people wanted to stand this time, but who had always said he would never run against Sepp Blatter. I mean, I think Platini would be a very good, obvious choice. I would have thought that maybe the Asian and even the African confederations will be looking around very hard to try and find candidates of their own, because they will be concerned that since, in effect, UEFA, Europe, has sort of pushed Blatter out at last, that Europe will be looking to regain the presidency for itself, and they may lose some of their the privileges that they've attained under the Blatter regime.
Thank you so much for your assessments. Keir Radnage there, who's a former editor of World Soccer magazine. We'll be right back after this short break with more on this breaking news story that Sepp Blatter has resigned. Stay with us.